Welcome everybody to today's live webinar on consolidating ADCs on next generation network functions platforms. So today's agenda, I see a number of you on the call that are familiar with array networks, but I also see that there's some people that may be new to array networks, want to know what we're all about. So I'll take a little bit of time to make some introductions who's on today's call, and then also give a bit of background about array networks just to build some awareness about our company. And the topic of today is consolidating ADCs. So I want to take a little bit of time and provide the context and talk a little bit about what are some of the business drivers behind why it makes sense for a number of customers to think about consolidating their ADCs. And there's a couple ways to go about this, right? So there's the traditional approach to load balancing and application delivery. And, one of the ways that people are looking at doing consolidation or getting more efficiency in their app delivery in their data center is to use virtual load balancing. But the truth of the matter is that really there's challenges with both the traditional approach to load balancing and app delivery and with going with a virtual approach, right? They do some things well, but there's some challenges with each. So I want to talk a little bit about that because it really does set up, what Array Networks is delivering with our network functions platform. So at that point, I'll introduce I guess what I would call the newer product or the newer approach that Array is bringing to market. And I'll show a little bit about how it's able to address some of the challenges with the traditional approach to load balancing, and also at the same time address some of the challenges that come up with a virtual approach to load balancing. Basically going over how we think this new approach or how the platform really gives the best of both worlds. And then I want to open it up to any questions that you might have with respect to either the company or the topic, the consolidation, the approach, the network function platform, et cetera. So that being said, just some quick housekeeping. My name is Paul Anderson. I am the Senior Director of Marketing here at Array Networks. I'll be guiding the majority of today's webinar. But I also have with me on the call Victor Marte. He's a Senior SE here at Array Networks, and a lot of times we get to the Q&A portion and there are some more technical questions with respect to the product, platform, solution, implementation, things of that nature. He's probably better equipped to field some of those questions. So have him with me on the call here today, and hopefully he'll get a chance to answer some questions at the conclusion of today's webinar. With respect to questions, the way we're going to do it is we have a Q&A window in the WebEx platform. We also have a chat window in the WebEx platform. Go ahead and use one or the other, it doesn't matter. And if you have a question as we go along, enter it in there so you don't forget it. But we'll also, when we get to the end, we'll field those questions that, have come up along the way. But that'll give those of you that, maybe had a question, didn't enter it in, but, while we're addressing some of those initial questions, you can go ahead and load your questions in at the end, not a problem. And usually we leave a fair bit of time, and so we're usually able to get to all the questions. If we don't get to all the questions, we'll find those answers and do some follow-up. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. So about Array, we've actually been around for a fair bit of time, since 2000. Array was actually the pioneer in what we called at the time integrated traffic management. So at the time, way back when, most people were just doing simple load balancing. Array was actually the first to see that it made a lot of sense to roll in things like SSL offloading, caching, compression, traffic shaping, GSLB, link load balancing, content scripting, different things of that nature, that it really made sense to consolidate all that into one product. So today, everybody's taking that approach. Now it's not a load balancer anymore or integrated traffic management. Today it's a application delivery controller or app delivery and so on. But we were really the first to do that, to introduce that concept to market. We've been doing it for a long time. So the products that we bring to market are, very robust and have a proven track record, proven history. Located in Milpitas, California, basically Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, and about 250 employees, but we are a global company, and so not only do we operate in North America and Europe, but we have a strong presence as well in APAC, in China, Japan, India, things of that nature. In terms of, just the market that we play in, obviously, the application delivery market, but, that's evolved a little bit. And, we have a very robust SSL VPN as well. We also have some other application delivery networking products as well, some supplementary ones. I won't go into those right now. But the main thing that we're focusing on today, and is the new product that we're bringing to market, is the Network Functions Platform. We're going to talk about that today. We call that our AVX series. But all of those really do roll up into, at this point, what I would call the app delivery and security market. In terms of the segments, for a long time, we've had great success in, traditional enterprise and, government, public sector markets. If I had to drill down a little bit, I'd say that Array Networks has found a home and a great fit in small to medium-sized enterprises, not to be confused with the SMB or small to medium business. But, just the fact that we have a very robust platform, very scalable, very feature-rich, but also very cost-effective and very simple, makes it a great fit for medium-sized enterprises. Not to say that we don't have some large enterprise customers, as you see at the bottom here of this slide, but we've just kind of found a real home in that medium enterprise market. Lately, and when I say lately, I mean the last 3 years, 3 to 4 years maybe, and the emergence of the cloud, we've also had really good success in providing equipment and solutions to infrastructure as a service cloud providers, MSPs, hosting providers that take our networking and security and are able to integrate that into a cloud management platform and offer it as a service, whether it's a private cloud or public cloud service, so load balancing as a service, things of that nature. And we've also seen success with SaaS companies, software as a service, where they've perhaps outgrown AWS or Azure, moving into their own private cloud and need something with very scalable SSL, and that can cost efficiently scale a SaaS application to millions of users. So, we've seen some great success there as well. As compared to, like I said, we've been around a long time, and as compared to some of our competitors, there's a lot of things that we do in terms of technology and IP, that we develop ourselves. So it's a very robust platform that's powered by a lot of our own technology. And again, having been around for, quite a while, we have a fair number of customers, and at this point, last count, just over 5,000 worldwide customers. So just to reinforce what I said, app delivery and security that's simple yet powerful, scalable yet cost-effective, I think is a good summary of Array and Array's history. And, you can see a good example there. I talked about the infrastructure as a service, SoftLayer, great example of that. Kroll, Oracle, Humana, enterprise customers, Morgan Stanley, Amdocs, so on, many more. So that gives just a brief background about Array, who we are, what we do, where we've been, and also a little bit of an introduction to where we're going. So with that, we'll hop into the meat of today's webinar. So what you can see building here is just a very simple representation of, I suppose, a traditional approach to load balancing or app delivery. And in this case, you can see I've used the example of an Exchange or SharePoint or Link or Oracle applications, SAP, Citrix, VDI, VMware, VDI, or SaaS or homegrown applications. Doesn't matter, but kind of the traditional model was you'd have a pair of load balancers, and that would front end 2, 3, 4, or more pool of servers behind the load balancers, that helped you to scale and provide availability, performance, and security for your applications. So let's talk about that. Things are changing, though. Requirements are evolving, right? So, one of the things, like I said, there's trade-offs, right? The hardware ADCs, hey, they deliver solid performance, right? They're reliable. For that application they're servicing, they're very scalable, reliable, got great performance. You can count on that performance. But, truth is, they don't always align well with some of the new trends in cloud and virtualized data centers. So, for example, hey, people are noticing that this approach is getting expensive, and in more ways than one. The hardware ADCs, they're expensive as compared to other networking equipment. hey, a pair of ADCs for each application makes them even more expensive. And I think critically as well in, private cloud, public cloud, virtualized data centers, remote data centers, where space is at a premium, these things take up a lot of room. And they also consume a lot of power, require a lot of cooling, and so on. So, and to build on that, they're also somewhat inefficient, right? The capacity isn't fungible. You've got a pair there, they've got the capacity they've got. If they're not being utilized, at, I guess, the optimal utilization, there's no way to tap in and use that capacity for something else, right? The ADC is not portable. Hey, if you're not using it, it can't be assigned to a different application. They're pretty much put in one place. They require physical installation, and that instance, it can't be moved to a different data center. It can't be moved to a different server. It can't be moved to the cloud and so on. So in some ways, it's inefficient as well. So with all that being said, they have their place, right? They're not going away. But the truth be told is that in, there are use cases now where they may not be the best choice. And I use this slide from Gartner to make a point. It's not just me saying this. Many analysts are seeing this trend, which is that, if you look at this here, and what are we looking at? The public cloud app delivery load balancers, those are growing, right? If you look at the virtual ADC that's being deployed in the virtual data center or in a private cloud, those are growing. Now, like I said, the hardware, right, it's not going away. It's just looks like maybe a slight decline or holding still. There's still a need for them. But consistent with what I kind of said, that there are, some downsides to the traditional approach to load balancing, and it's what's opening up the market to and driving the popularity or the adoption of this virtual approach or software approach to load balancing and app delivery. And I will say, today we're talking about ADCs, but this trend here, I looked at some of the market data for other network services, security services, app delivery services. This holds true for a number of different networking and security services as well, in addition to just ADCs. So, people love, or people are liking the software, right? It's kind of the flip side to the traditional approach, right? It's agile, it's portable, it's efficient, it's fungible, it's got all that agility. That's the flip side, right? But again, there's the trade-off, right? They lack the performance, right? So we look at this graphic I have here, and you can see that on the physical ADC, right, it benefited from hardware-accelerated components, very scalable, guaranteed performance. But if you look at when you deploy a virtual ADC or a virtual load balancer on a commodity server, hey, it's a commodity server. It's not purpose-built. It doesn't have the specialized components, accelerator components, and things of that nature. Also, it's running a hypervisor. That hypervisor takes away from the available, performance of that platform. You have VM contention. There's, you load up. Even though you assign certain CPU and memory to the particular VM, these VMs fight for resources on the platform. And in the end, what you get is something to where you get a lower level of performance. And you also get best effort performance. There's no way to guarantee the performance for the ADC. So just to highlight a little bit about, the early part of this discussion is that, hey, you've got the traditional approach, you've got the new virtualized approach. They each have their pros and they each have their cons. So to build on that, let's talk a little bit about, even though you may want to go this direction of, deploying virtual network and security services and app delivery functions and so on, with consideration of the fact that they do have their shortcomings, it's good to be aware of who might that impact or what are some of those use cases where it may not lend itself well. So performance and availability for business critical applications. So, if you create two buckets and you talk about, applications and services, you're going to have ones that are nice to have, best effort, things, smaller traffic loads, things of that nature, or staging environments, dev environments. You know what it is where the virtual ADC is, it's okay, it's sufficient, right? But you also know that in your enterprise you have processes that can't go down, that they need an SLA, they need a guaranteed performance, they need to work at a certain level under a certain load, no ifs, ands, or buts, right? So that is where the virtual load balancer may not be as applicable, right? So if you need to support high volume traffic, the other thing to think about too is, again, how intensive is the workload or the configuration that you're asking the virtual appliance to do. So you've got high volume traffic, complex configurations with multiple functions, or secured HTTPS traffic or connections, right? Because the SSL encryption places a great load on the function, right? So it can easily bog it down. So the best effort general purpose servers don't provide a sufficiently scalable environment. And the benefits of the virtual ADCs in this case don't outweigh the cost to the business if the application doesn't function the way that it needs to. So in those cases, hey, just be aware that maybe the virtual approach, even though it's got its benefits, may not be the best. Again, SLAs for managed services and cloud infrastructure services. Again, there are some customers that are just fine, served by, a basic load balancer, virtual load balancer, best effort, lower demands and so on. But if you are doing managed services for an enterprise customer where it's again, business critical applications, they've purchased the service with an SLA. So you need to provide a higher level of performance for enterprise class customers. Customers require assurances and guarantee performance for their purchase capacity. And they also need a greater degree of separation and partitioning to ensure compliance, right? So virtual environments, shared environment where there isn't a very strong demarcation between, what belongs to customer A and what belongs to customer B, this may not cut it in certain situations. So just some of the situations where that approach falls short. So all this is really building up to eventually customers, they're demanding, right? Right now there's a trade-off, and people are okay with that for a while. Oh, I got use case A, that fits better with the traditional approach. I've got use case B, hey, cool, I get to use the virtual approach, and it's a great approach, and it works well. Over time, people are not going to want to make that compromise, right? So customers increasingly are wanting both agility and performance, right? And what that is requiring is that there needs to be a third option or a new approach that can offer both the agility and the performance. So what we need here is somewhat of a hybrid approach that combines the best of virtual and the best of physical appliances. That's what's required. Agility and performance, the best of both worlds. So we can see where this is going, and it's leading us to, the network functions platform. So, this is, the title of this webinar, Consolidating ADCs with a Network Functions Platform, okay? And the Network Functions Platform is the new approach and the new solution and the new product that Array Networks is bringing to market. So talking about it a little bit here, you can see that it's sitting at the intersection of, a part of it is, it's like a server, right? It's a multi-tenant environment that's virtualized. In this case, it's a purpose-built hardware platform. It's been virtualized using KVM. But like a dedicated appliance, it can support guaranteed performance, and it's also very scalable. So it's a cloud network functions platform, and it gives you that agility of cloud and virtualization, but it doesn't sacrifice the performance and the reliability and the scalability of a dedicated appliance. And the three pillars, I suppose, that would define this network functions platform is, again, that it's a virtualized platform, hardware appliance, KVM environment, purpose-built for app delivery, networking, and security. It's got guaranteed performance. So the way that we do that is we dedicate CPU and memory per VM. We also dedicate SSL and I/O interfaces per VM. We leverage SR-IOV to ensure that we are able to carve up both the SSL and the interfaces and assign that specifically to a particular VM. And the other thing we do is we reserve resources for hypervisor management, so there is no contention between hypervisor management or the constituent VMs on the platform. There's some more that goes into it, but at a high level, these are the techniques that we're using, and it's unique to Array Networks, how we're able to host VMs and host virtual functions and be able to give a higher level of performance, but also guaranteed performance for that VM and for that virtual network function. And our platform is also an open architecture. Today, we're going to be talking about array virtual functions, right? Arrays VAPV, virtual ADC, arrays VXAG, virtual SSL VPN, et cetera. Obviously, arrays, virtual functions, app delivery, and security, they can be hosted on this network functions platform. But it's an open architecture. That means that if you wish to put a virtual network function from another networking or security or app delivery vendor, and you want to host that on this platform to get the agility of cloud and the performance of a dedicated appliance, you can absolutely do that. And that can be best of breed, third party, it can be open source, et cetera, et cetera. So it's array functions and it's third party functions. So if you look at the items in yellow, what's the so what of these three pillars, right? The customers are desiring the agility of software, but increasingly are aware of the need for agility at scale and the cost efficiency afforded by hardware. For the guaranteed performance, you can see that the private clouds need guaranteed performance for mission-critical apps, and public clouds, or managed services, private clouds need guaranteed performance for customer SLAs, like we touched on a little bit earlier. And then lastly, on the open architecture, the customers aren't one size fits all. Some want best of breed, some want value, and others want to host for cost-effective or DevOps-centric software solutions. Building on that, this graphic here is kind of goes around the world and talks about in the light gray white area there talks about some of the attributes that provided that agility of cloud and virtualization, and in the dark gray some of the elements, how we're providing the performance of a guaranteed appliance. So it's got that element of pay as you grow, right? You have a platform and you add functions to it as you need to, right? You pay for those as you go. Variable size virtual machines, right? So on the platform, you can populate it however you want. You can carve it up into a greater number of smaller VMs or a smaller number of larger VMs, or mix and match depending on what you need. Multiple network functions. So not only can you have different sizes, you can have different functions. You can decide that, look, this is purely for consolidation, and I'm only doing one function on here, and it's going to be this function of this size, and I'm going to just drive consolidation for it. Absolutely. Or you can mix and match. You can say, hey, I want this platform to host everything that I need to support application A. And I need an ADC, I need a WAF, I need a DDoS, and I need, whatever, an SSL VPN. And all those functions are hosted on here on an appropriately sized virtual machine, and I'm good to go supporting a particular application. So very flexible, right? And again, there's a lot of things that we do. I talked about integration with cloud management that, the infrastructure as a service provider. We support the Cisco ACI APIC framework, OpenStack, Neutron framework. We also have what we call our eCloud RESTful API, very powerful in terms of integrating with orchestration, cloud management, and so on, for people that are looking for not just the consolidation, but also the cloud principles or cloud elements of orchestration and automation. Just moving on to, how we enable the guaranteed performance is, as I mentioned before, full resource segmentation. So we dedicate resources for hypervisor management to eliminate VM contention, and we dedicate CPU, SSL, memory interfaces per VM for guaranteed workload performance. This is a very quick example of, in this case, there's a mix of items. You can see that there's an array ADC, an array SSL VPN, but you can deploy functions from third-party vendors on the platform, no problem. They can all be one vendor. You don't have to have array on it if you don't want to. They can be, let's say, all Fortinet next-gen firewalls if you want. Not a problem. So just a quick visual representation of how you could populate the platform. And as I said, there's situation dictates, use case dictates, right? There are some use cases where a dedicated appliance is, what you need. There's others where, hey, I want a multi-purpose appliance that's got all kinds of things built into one product, and that suffices for me, and it's a good choice for me. Or I just want to do a virtual edition on, traditional virtualized server environment, that might work for me. But I really want to highlight how the network functions platform really does provide the best of all worlds, right? You can deploy best of breed on it if you want, right? Because it's up to you what virtual functions you deploy on it. Performance, we've already talked about. We can give a higher level of guaranteed performance. Agility, yeah, that license that you have for that virtual network function, if you decide it belongs on a different AVX or you decide it belongs instead on a traditional virtual environment, yeah, you can move it. And cost, we're going to go into this a little bit later, but it's very cost effective as compared to both the traditional load balancing and the virtual load balancing approaches. Just to give you an idea, I'm not going to go into the specifics of all the performance attributes and metrics and specifications, but the point being is that if you like this, approach, this platform approach, you can get into it at whatever size that's appropriate for your organization. Right now we have small, medium, and large, and obviously it's pretty straightforward. It's basically each one has twice as much as the next one, right? So you can kind of see how those stack up. And so, use case scenarios, and I've touched on this, and I'm only really going to drill down on consolidation because that's the topic of today's webinar. So, from the perspective of, it doesn't matter whether you're an enterprise or, an MSP, but you can collapse a lot of racks of whether it be ADC, WAF, DDoS, SSL VPN, next-gen firewall, something that might have populated 2 racks, you can now, grind down into, a 2-rack unit network functions platform that gives you the exact same performance. And gives you a lot of the benefits of cloud and virtualization as well. Drives tremendous cost efficiencies, both in terms of the space, power, cooling, and also the cost of the hardware as well. Enterprise apps would be another one that I touched on briefly, which is, hey, I've got a mission-critical app, but it requires a lot of layer 4 through layer 7 networking and security services, and I want to dedicate the network functions platform to hosting all the services needed to support one particular application. And that would be another use case. And cloud services, right? Whether you're an infrastructure provider or managed service provider, using this thing. A lot of these providers are looking at, hey, I want this, homogeneous virtualized server environment, and that's the direction I want to go. And that's great for the application workloads. That's what it was designed for. But they're finding it doesn't work as well for the networking and security functions, right? So the network functions platform gives a nice complement to, the commodity virtualized server environment. Those are doing the application workloads, and a fleet of network functions platforms are behaving in a very similar fashion, but are hosting the networking and security functions because it's designed to do so, and it does it very efficiently and very cost effectively. So with that being said, though, let's talk about the consolidation and why this makes a lot of sense, right? So why do we want to consolidate or find an alternative ADC solution? So again, the hardware ADCs are expensive as compared to other networking equipment, additional costs associated with space, power, cooling. And again, the hardware ADC capacity not fungible, instances aren't portable, et cetera, et cetera. Why moving to virtual ADCs on the commodity server is also not an answer, right? Well, the solution, to be honest, it still remains expensive. We've done some looking around. The virtual ADCs, they're actually not that cheap. But in addition to that, you have the cost of hypervisor licensing, the server infrastructure itself. It's more flexible, it's more agile, but in many instances, it's still very expensive. And performance remains an obstacle. Where you have complex configurations, high volume traffic, a lot of HTTPS, SSL, TLS encryption, where you need to service business critical applications and or maintain customer SLAs, and hey, that's not really an option either. So what we want to do is something along these lines, right? So this is, let's say this is the starting point or the before picture. Where you've got, hey, I got 32 load balancers in here, and they're supporting a myriad of different applications. And granted that they have guaranteed performance, But again, expensive hardware, inefficient space, power, and cooling, non-portable, non-fungible, etc. And what we really want to do is something that looks like this, right? If I basically support the same exact use case that I use our network functions platform, I can consolidate 32 of our VAPV virtual ADC hosted on our network functions platform, each of which delivering the same level of performance as the dedicated load balancers, and each of which being fully independent, same as the traditional approach. So what do we get? Agility and performance, the best of both worlds. Guaranteed performance, cost-effective, significantly reduced space, power, and cooling, and licenses and functions that are portable and fungible. So again, that best of both worlds. And I did an analysis here. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this or not, but for the purposes of this comparison, I use Kemp Technologies. It really doesn't matter. If you were to slot in F5 or Citrix or anybody else, these pricing comparisons are only going to get more expensive. So I put the Kemp in there based off of publicly available pricing that they have listed on their website. So hey, it's there. I feel like it's free to use it. In this example, we're going to go with what I set up on the previous slide, which is 32 load balancers, each of which have to deliver roughly 4 gig throughput ADC. And so we see, kind of how this shakes out, right? If I want to take the virtual ADC approach using 32 of 5 gig virtual appliances, 10K per appliance, that's $320,000. But I also got to pay for the servers. I also got to pay annual hypervisor licensing costs. You're still, there's a lot of space, power, cooling. It's more for all those servers that are hosting that. On the upside, it is portable and fungible. It's a virtual solution. Guaranteed performance, no. Okay, let's look at the physical appliances again. In this case, a little bit less in terms of throughput, 3.5, but 7K per instance. So you're looking at 225K. Yeah, you don't have any additional costs of servers, hypervisors, but you're taking up a lot of space, a lot of power, a lot of cooling. Not portable and fungible. Guaranteed performance? Yeah, pretty much. You got a dedicated appliance there. You know what you're getting. Now let's look at the AVX Network Functions platform. 32 instances, each with 4 gig throughput, and I priced this out using our price sheet, list price, $150,000, okay? Additional costs for servers? No. Hypervisor costs? No. Space, power, cooling? Greatly reduced. Are these functions and the licenses fungible? Yes. Is there guaranteed performance? Yes. So it's not an end-all, be-all. It's not going to be perfect for every situation, but there are a lot of positives to this approach and to the network functions platform. And a case study, I think a good representation of this is the software use case, where they've got a couple offerings. They've got a shared offering that they use our load balancers to power, where they've got many customers on one ADC. They also have a dedicated service offering where they were deploying an individual array ADC, single unit dedicated load balancer per customer. Of course, all tied into their management system for automated provisioning, but still, for dedicated services, they were deploying one dedicated traditional hardware load balancer or a pair. And basically, this worked well for a long time. However, again, with limited space at their, what they call their pods and their data centers around the world, in order to continue to scale this, they needed a solution that was much more flexible and also a lot denser. But because they're selling services with guaranteed performance, with SLAs attached to them, they can't just move to a general purpose virtualized server environment to host these app delivery functions. So the AVX Network Functions platform is what they're moving to, and they're moving to it for exactly the reasons that have been outlined in this webinar, which is they're a cloud infrastructure as a service provider. They need something that's flexible, highly efficient, highly agile, highly portable, capable of being orchestrated, has all the attributes of cloud and virtualization, but due to the nature of their customers and the nature of their services, they need to have guaranteed performance. The network function platform delivers that for them. So it's a great use case, both in the cloud, in MSP, but also for consolidation, and so on. And I will touch on here just some additional the AVX series use cases. So I talked a little bit about you can take, you can take a consolidation approach, right, where you're basically saying, hey, look, I got this one function. I really want to drive efficiency and consolidate one function. Or what I call integration, which is where you load the platform up with different functions that all work together and you kind of service chain them. And you can do that for, if you're in the app delivery or the networking group, go ahead. You can take both of these approaches. If you're in the security group, you can go ahead and take these approaches, right? Consolidate next-gen firewall, or put next-gen firewall and a dedicated SSL VPN because you need more robust, secure mobile access. Or, hey, look, I'm an infrastructure as a service provider or a managed service provider. Hey, I can either consolidate one particular, service function, or I can say I'm building a pool. I'm building a fleet of network functions platforms from which I am going to host my networking and security services. And there might be different services on different platforms depending on how cloud management has most efficiently decided to leverage the resources on the platform. So the takeaway here is that this platform can be a fit for different groups in the organization, and it can be used to consolidate and perhaps keep more of an emphasis on performance, or it can be used to mix and match and to integrate with more of a focus on service chaining and efficiency. More software-defined approach. So today we've talked a lot about using the network function platform for ADC consolidation, but every time we have these conversations, people see the power in it. It can do a lot more. So if some of those things piqued your interest, absolutely, talk to us about it, and we'll see if we can help you out. And kind of wrapping things up a little bit here is, it's an eye chart, but we think there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of value with the network functions platform. I'm not going to read them all. We've touched on most of them. But really they found some key buckets here, right, which is performance, flexibility, IT benefits, and also cost. So, we talked about that it's scalable performance, guaranteed performance. Even if you are deploying different functions, it still maintains that higher level of performance, and you can run whatever you want on it in terms of best of breed, so on and so forth. Flexible, you can repurpose it, on-demand capacity, multiple functions, different sizes. The IT benefits, streamlining the infrastructure, fewer points of failure, compliance-centric with its separation, virtual capacity. A lot of times we're talking to customers now, and they're in the security group, and they're like, yeah, I don't have immediate access to a virtual environment. That's controlled by the server guys or the networking guys, whatever it is. This platform gives them, a place to host security functions, but also gives them capacity where they can load things into a virtual environment and have, a sandbox or a platform where they can begin to deploy and play with different solutions and so on. And, of course, cost, right? Reducing space, power, cooling, pay-as-you-go, lower CapEx, lower OpEx, and so on. Now, with all that being said, bringing things full circle, I started off by saying that, Array has been around for a fair bit of time, and that, hey, we've been doing load balancers, app delivery, SSL VPN for a long time. We think that this network functions platform is going to be a great fit. But I also said use case dictates, and there will be a place for virtual approaches, dedicated hardware approaches, private cloud, public cloud. Hey, that's all still available. So, if your use case is like, hey, you like what you heard here today, but, for a particular reason, you just needed a hardware appliance dedicated, or you needed a virtual edition for a particular hypervisor, or you're deploying in AWS or Azure, whatever, we've got all that too, right? So you can kind of see here on the left, I put the load balancers. On the right, I put the SSL VPNs. From the hardware, we've got, entry level to very high end, same on the SSL VPN. In terms of the virtual editions of our platform, it can run on VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix, KVM, Huawei Fusion Sphere. Even if you're deploying Nutanix or some other hyper-converged infrastructure, we're certified to run on Acropolis hypervisor or different things like that. In the public cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, vCloud Air, different public cloud environments, SoftLayer, et cetera, we mentioned them, you can get that as well. So, hey, we have something that we're doing that we think is very compelling, and it's unique to Array. It's a new direction for us, but we still have all the products that we've always had all along, so that you know what, if it doesn't matter what deployment model or requirement you have, you know, we can meet your needs. And I want to just wrap up here. Now we're switching gears more to promotional stuff a little bit, but it's worth putting out there. You know, we do have some F5 replacement campaigns and also Juniper replacement campaigns, you know, that we have running right now. So we talked about consolidating ADCs on a network functions platform. Well, hey, that could be, you know, if you're an existing Array customer and, you know, you've bought our load balancers and ADCs in the past, and, you know, it's time to refresh that, hey, let's look at a network functions platform, right? However, we do, there's a lot of new people on this webinar, and we talked to a lot of people that might have taken, you know, have a lot of F5 load balancers and ADCs. Again, highly expensive, right? And they may be looking at, hey, it's time to refresh that infrastructure. You know, do you want to pay $1 million or do you want to pay $200,000 to $300,000? Do you want to get locked into traditional, you know, big iron load balancing again for another 4 or 5 years, or do you want to move towards something that's got more of a cloud and virtualization component built into it that's more future-proof, right? So for those that are sitting on F5, perhaps even sitting on Citrix, you know, or another brand, hey, look, we've got some replacement campaigns that can help you replace that infrastructure with a network functions platform and do that even more cost-effectively than what I showed on the previous slide when I did the cost analysis. Very similarly, if you have, for instance, Juniper, right? They had the Juniper SA, the Juniper Mag, Juniper Pulse. They got out of that business, right? And so you've got a number of customers that are out there that, you know, are looking at potentially, you know, a refresh of that equipment, right? And again, the network functions platform might be a much more future-proof, much more efficient manner to meet your secure remote mobile access needs going forward. So if that's the case, again, we have some very compelling replacement program incentives that can get you out of the old and into the new, something much more flexible, future-proof, much more efficient, but also much more cost-effective. So if you fall into one of those categories or that's something that might be of interest, absolutely follow up after the webinar, and we'll see if maybe we have a solution for you. So with that, that concludes, and good, we've got, you know, about 10 to 15 minutes here for some Q&A, so I'm going to quickly do some checks here and see what we got going in the Q&A. All right, so we do have some questions here, so I'm going to dig into them. Hey, Victor, can you, are you good there?
I am. I'm here.
All right, so I think some of these I can field, and some of these I'll turn over to you. So let me, I'll get started here. And while we're answering some of these, if others have questions, go ahead and type them in, and I think we can burn through these here. All right, so I'm going to take some of these initial ones here. So a lot of people asked about the presentation and or a recording for those that either, you know, somebody in your organization that wasn't able to be on, or if you need to share the information with a group or with management for the purposes of a discussion. Yeah, absolutely. Within an hour or two after we conclude the webinar, we generally send a PDF of the presentation out to everybody. And then it takes a little bit to process the recording, but we generally have the recording available within 3 to 4 days. And when it is available, we post it to our YouTube site, which is youtube.com/arraytv, and that's where they go. And we send a follow-up notice with respect to that. Is there a way, is there an option to evaluate either the platform or your virtual appliances? So I'll start out with the virtual appliances because those are the easiest. If you go to our public website and you see there's a prominent button there called How to Try, if you click on that, you go to our download center, or from there you can get a virtual edition of any of our products, you know, for you to try for 30 days. If you need an extension, we can always provide an extension. So it's very, very easy to get your hands on the virtual editions of Array products. With respect to trying out the platform itself, the hardware appliance platform. Victor, I'll turn that over to you. Do we have a provision that allows people to begin to learn about or get their hands on or tap into the platform itself?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of options. If you want to get exposed to the appliance itself, we can schedule something with you, or we could give you a walkthrough the interface and the management of the appliance. Now, if you have a compelling case, we can figure a way to get an appliance on your hands and work with you to run a proof of concept for a particular project that you may have. If you have any questions, my contact information is going to be sent to you, and you can contact me directly, and I can work with you on that.
Awesome, thanks. Can you explain again how you ensure guaranteed performance for the virtual machines on your appliance? So, yeah, it's really, it's the main elements of it are there, like I described earlier. It's really a combination of, I guess, three things, right? It's that ability, number one, as you're loading the virtual function onto the platform to be able to use the management interface to assign, these are the vCPUs that are dedicated to this function. These are the SSL cores that are dedicated to this function. How much memory is dedicated to this function? And, using SRIOV on the network interfaces, we're able to carve up that network interface and assign, the portions of that network interface to a particular VM, right? So every single resource that's required to support that function at a particular performance level has been partitioned and separated, allocated, and assigned to that VM. And what we do as well, like I talked about, is that sometimes we've done a lot of research on this, on some of the competition, right? And they'll say, we can do a multi-tenant ADC. And then I look at, how they're doing it, and I go, well, look, all the resources have been assigned to the ADCs. So what's the hypervisor running on? Yeah, it's all screwed up, right? They're all competing for resources. They haven't been hard partitioned, right? So you scratch below the surface and you begin to see that they're not doing what they need to do in order to be able to credibly say that they can do guaranteed performance. So that's how we do it. How is the solution priced, and do I need to pay for both the hardware and the ADC and SSL VPN software modules? So the way it's priced is that there is a cost for the platform, and then the virtual functions are essentially a separate line item, right? And the reason we do that is because I talked about the fact that you can run both array functions and you can run third-party functions, right? If we intermingle the array functions with the capacity on the platform, then it wouldn't make sense as you go to purchase a third-party functions if you've had to pay for something, an array function that you may not have needed, right? So you pay for the platform, and then all you do is you can consult the array price list for virtual functions, or you consult the price list that the third-party vendor makes available for their virtual functions, and it's very clean like that. So that's how it's priced. Sorry if I missed it. Is the equivalent of F5's GTM Global Traffic Manager included or priced separately? For the array platform, it's actually included. I'm going to go back and double check on that because on our traditional hardware appliances, the Global Traffic Manager is an add-on, but for our virtual appliances, it's integrated. And since you're buying the virtual edition for the platform, it's integrated, so it's rolled in. But I'm going to confirm that. Victor, maybe you can help me with this one. Why did Array decide to design each solution or function as its own separate virtual appliance rather than creating an ADC that just simply consolidated multiple features and functions into a single appliance like F5 and some of the others have done?
That functionality is already available on our platform, meaning if you want to host multiple services, multiple, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I believe you're saying is that multiple services could be offered from one single appliance. That's already available on our basic ADC. Now, what the platform offers is the ability to host completely individual instances of ADCs, and each one of those you got to host multiple services or host multiple applications or functions. So that is already available. We do have equivalency to how F5 works. We do that today. This is just an addition to that.
And I would add to that what we've found is that, truth be told, if you have a big IP or something, right, and you're going to ask that thing to do a very complicated ADC configuration, right, under heavy load, then you want it to do a very robust web app firewall. Then you're going to ask it to do a very robust DDoS. Then this doesn't make sense. Something's going to give, right? You're not going to get the performance. And again, you get back to competing resources and functions where the performance takes a dive, and you don't know what you have to work with. So, if you use the network functions platform, hey, deploy ADC on VM1, deploy, WAF on, VM2. Deploy DDoS on VM3. Those will never compete with each other, right? You know exactly what you're going to get. You get the higher level of performance and you get guaranteed performance. Now you simply service chain it so that, you don't basically try to put all those things on, one operating system or on one platform and have everything take a dive. So there are some additional considerations like that. You talked about your replacement program and perhaps moving away from something like an F5 and deploying array load balancing on the network functions platform. How would you say the feature sets or the capabilities of your ADC or SSL VPN functions stack up against some of the competition? Victor, you want to talk to that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, when we compare ourselves a lot, what we run to the most out there when dealing with different opportunities is F5. Now, I would say that we can perform 100% of the functionality that F5 offers. The difference with Array is that a lot of the scripting that's necessary in order to configure an application or service to perform a certain way, policies. With Array, it's a lot simpler because a lot of the functionalities are already built into the product via dropdown. For instance, if you want to create a policy which routes traffic based on hostname, that's a dropdown with Array. With F5, you will have to create a script, an iRule script to make it do that. Now, there are two advantages to that. One is that you do not need to learn scripting. The second is that when we perform the code that's performing that function, with us it's actually running as part of the operating system itself. So it doesn't need to be interpreted. It's not a script that needs to be interpreted and then run. Now, when you're doing that thousands of times per second, it does have an impact on the product. So we can actually outperform F5 in that case. Now, there have been cases I've heard that, there are some functionality that are very, very specific that F5 can do that we cannot. I personally have not seen that. Each time I had been faced with the replacement, we have been able to do everything that they've asked. So we play at the high-end enterprise level and all the way down to the very basic load balancing function. Now, the SSL VPN. Our SSL VPN is very mature. it's a product that has evolved, and it has evolved as the result of requirements that the customers have, so it has adapted to the needs. So you will find that, if you have an idea or a solution that you want to work on, you could pretty much map that solution to a product. It will morph itself to do whatever you want it to do. For instance, it can work with individual portals, meaning each portal will have its own IP address and its own complete set of security policies. And you can make decisions based on a different community of users. So if you have some users within your organizations that are just regular users, they will connect and they'll get access to the resources that they need. Now, through the same portal, the administrator could come in and authenticate and get a high level of access, meaning access to subnets or resources that are predetermined based on the fact that he's an administrator. I hope that answers the questions.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've got 3 more here, and then a little bit of time left. I'm going to see if I can squeeze them in here. One question here is, where is our tech support located? So I'll say this, it's kind of 2 ways to look at this. We have, dedicated SEs like Victor, but in the West, in the Central, in the East. For North America, our tech support is based out of our headquarters here in Silicon Valley, so we have a strong team here. If you're talking about our markets like the China, India, Japan, they also have their own dedicated tech support teams. So pretty strong coverage there in terms of tech support, whether that's pre-sales, post-sales, or you name it. Is there a way to determine how many of my existing load balancers can be consolidated into one Array AVX appliance? Hey, Victor, is there any kind of rule of thumb, or is that something where we just, reach out to them and, talk about throughput, talk about SSL, talk about different attributes, and kind of see how it maps to our different, VM size options?
Correct. I mean, we will have to see how you're using the traffic demand that you currently have. And based on that, they will determine the size of the VMs that you will need, and essentially then the platform, the model of the platform that will support the number of ADCs that was for your solution. So we'll need to start by looking at maybe the logs, a historical log on the usage, and then base our recommendations based on that.
And I think this is the last question here. So at the end, there were incentives for F5 replacement, Juniper replacement. Would these same offers hold true or be available for Citrix or another brand, ADC or SSL VPN? The answer is yes. We've run a webinar on purely focused on F5 replacement and Juniper replacement, and in both of those, that question has come up there as well. Can we make some of those incentives available for a different brand? And we have made that available actually. So if that's the case, you're sitting on something that's maybe a different brand, but you still find this solution compelling, reach out to us, and we do tend to make those programs available for other vendors as well. So let me do a quick check. I think we've covered it all. I'm going to look at the chat window one more time. I think that's it. So that's all of our questions. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Victor, thanks for hopping on and helping me out with some of the technical questions. So as I said, everyone will get a copy of of the presentation, of the recording, and so on. If you have any questions, reach out to either myself or to Victor. We'll absolutely answer them. So with that, we'll conclude today's webinar. Thank you for joining us, everybody.